A lion doesn't roar before it strikes. The strongest among us don't boast to intimidate. Some rely on noise or raw emotion to threaten, but true strength is quiet, unpredictable, and controlled. That's what makes it formidable. What you can't predict, you can't control. And what you can't control, you fear. In this world, the most intimidating person isn't the loudest talker. It's the one who stays silent, yet commands the room. Their silence isn't indifference. It's a sign they've seen everything and choose not to react. Today, we'll build that presence, not through tricks or loud words, but with 6 inner states inspired by ancient Stoic wisdom. Each one makes your adversaries question their every move. They can't predict your next step or understand who you are. That's why they fear you. Let's begin. They expect you to flinch or lash out. Instead, you meet them with silence. And the dynamic shifts instantly. Most people react instinctively, arguing when offended, explaining when threatened, or raging when provoked. But that's not strength. It's being puppeted by others' emotions. When your enemies dictate your feelings, they've already won by stealing your peace. When you argue back or protest, you signal they've pierced your armor. That's their goal. But picture this: you don't flinch. You don't speak. You don't even blink. You just gaze back with calm. Irrémédiable poise. Suddenly, they're unsure of what comes next. Suddenly, their own weaknesses are exposed. That's what's truly intimidating. It's not noise, but silence that unnerves. In silence, you force your adversaries to face their own flaws. You hold up a mirror, making them sit with their doubts. They crave chaos. You give them stillness. They want a show. You offer emptiness. And emptiness never lies. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond." When you respond with silence and absolute control, you're not weak. You've mastered the inner battle. I knew a man, quiet and unassuming, who never raised his voice. One day, in a meeting, a colleague tried to humiliate him, mocking his ideas as outdated before everyone. He didn't argue or acknowledge the jab. He just looked at his attacker and asked, "Are you done?" Then returned to his work. The room fell silent, heavy with tension. The attacker shrank. That silence didn't say, "I'm weak." It said, "You can't shake me. You don't define me." That silence shattered his opponent more than any comeback could. Someone unshaken is untouchable. Someone who doesn't need to prove anything becomes the most formidable presence in the room. So, train yourself in stillness. Master the pause. Let the storm rage around you while you stand firm. In a world chasing reactions, refusing to react is your greatest weapon. There's a presence that doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't demand notice through volume or drama. It's simply calm, steady, and unshakable. That's what makes it powerful. Because most people are just noise, filling space with anxious energy. They talk too much, move too fast, try too hard. They crave attention like oxygen, validation like water. They try to dominate without realizing true strength doesn't need to dominate. It simply owns the space, unapologetically, rooted in real value, not performance. There's something unsettling about a man who doesn't flinch, doesn't explain, doesn't chase approval. He stands there, alert yet silent, present yet untouchable, shifting the room's energy. People lower their voices when speaking to him. They choose their words carefully. They glance at him before finishing a sentence, not because he demands it, but because his quiet energy commands it. That's true power, not the loud, demanding kind, but a power that radiates from within, built on discipline, clarity, and restraint. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your attacker." An unshakable presence doesn't just ignore enemies, it rises so far above them they can't reach you. That's why they fear you. I knew a man named Elias, average build, simple clothes, rarely smiled. But when he entered a room, people noticed not because he tried, but because he didn't need to. He moved slowly, spoke only when necessary, held eye contact just long enough to unsettle. Every gesture and word deliberate. Even when he said nothing, you felt something profound had been conveyed. He worked in a cutthroat industry where egos reigned. Meetings were loud, with people arguing to prove their brilliance. But Elias stayed silent, waiting until the noise faded, then asked one question, often just a single, sharp question, and suddenly the room snapped from chaos to precision. It wasn't just his words, it was how he carried himself. No wasted movements, no unnecessary emotions. He was a reminder that in a reactive world, silence is a threat. People feared his quiet because it was unpredictable, a sign he was watching, calculating, choosing his moment. The ones who fear you most aren't the loudest. They're the ones who can't predict your next move. That's the power of a steady presence. It throws adversaries off balance, makes manipulators tread carefully, silences even the loudest voices with your quiet. So how do you build this? Stop performing. Stop chasing attention. Breathe slower. Stand taller. Observe more than you speak. Practice doing nothing until your silence becomes the loudest sound in the room. A man with purpose, clarity, and restraint doesn't rush. He makes the world slow down to meet him. When that happens, you don't need to claim power. You are power. There's a reason people provoke you. It's not always hate. Sometimes it's fear. Fear of what you represent. Your progress. Your calm. Your refusal to play their emotional games. That's why they attack. Not with fists, but with words. Not to win, but to unsettle. The truth is, insults aren't about truth, they're about control. They want to disrupt your balance. Test if they can steal your peace. They want to feel powerful by making you react, but the moment you respond, you've given them what they want. No matter how clever your comeback or justified your anger, reacting hands them victory. If they steal even a moment of your peace, they've won. But when you don't blink, don't explain, don't acknowledge their insult, it echoes louder in their mind than ever. Silence in the face of attack isn't weakness, it's a verdict. A calm declaration that they're not worth your response. Nothing humbles someone more than being ignored by the person they tried to wound. I knew a woman named Clara, working in a toxic office where gossip and subtle hostility were currency. One jealous colleague, petty and cruel, constantly tried to undermine Clara. The insults started subtly backhanded compliments, whispers just loud enough to hear, sarcasm in meetings framed as jokes. But Clara never took the bait, not once. She smiled gently, took notes, stayed focused, and left the room as calmly as she entered. Over time, something strange happened. The attacker grew louder, meaner, desperate for a reaction. But the louder she got, the smaller she seemed. Eventually, people stopped laughing, stopped listening. When you keep hitting an unmoving wall, you start to look foolish. Clara didn't fight back or expose her enemy. She stood so firm that the attacker collapsed under her own pressure. That's the Stoic lesson. Let fools reveal themselves. Let insults fall meaningless against your silence. Let attackers crumble under their own insecurities. Epictetus wrote, "If someone speaks ill of you, don't defend yourself. Say, clearly, they don't know the real me." In other words, never give enemies the satisfaction of your explanation. Don't offer your anger or clarity. Give them silence. Because those who don't defend themselves have either lost or risen above the fight. Be the latter. Let your silence speak volumes. Let your dignity be unbreakable. The next time someone insults you, smile not because it doesn't sting, but because it doesn't touch what matters most. People fear what they can't predict. They may not admit it, but when you're unreadable, you're dangerous. Control starts with information. Your fears, ambitions, habits, and weaknesses are leverage in the wrong hands. The more you talk, the more you explain, the more they learn not to understand you, but to manipulate, unsettle, or outmaneuver you. But when you stay reserved, move without warning, and don't justify yourself, you become a puzzle they can't solve, a question they can't answer, a storm they can't predict. That's what terrifies them. You don't need to lie or deceive. You just need to create distance between who you are and what they know. The Stoics understood this. They didn't live loudly or flaunt their desires. They acted with purpose, not for attention, sharing only what was necessary. Never everything. Every detail revealed can be exploited. Seneca said, "Knowing when to speak and when to stay silent is a gift." Sometimes, silence isn't just wisdom, it's defense. I knew a man named Caleb, soft-spoken and disciplined, who never shared too much. When people pried into his personal life, he smiled, gently redirected, never cold, but always guarded. Some called him mysterious, others arrogant, but over time, those same people respected him. Why? Because they couldn't figure him out. They didn't know what angered him, what unsettled him, or what he truly wanted. So they couldn't use anything against him. When pressure mounted and rumors swirled, Caleb remained untouched. No one could find his emotional triggers. No one saw his inner plans. He moved like a shadow, and they feared what he might do next, because they didn't know his limits. That's the power of being unreadable. Enemies can't break what they can't reach, and they can't reach what they don't understand. To build this armor, stop broadcasting your every move. Stop announcing every goal. Stop letting others into every corner of your mind. Let them guess, wonder, and misstep. The man who keeps his secrets doesn't hide weakness. He holds power. The world has no weapon against a man who walks in silence, wielding his truth like a blade, revealing only what the moment demands. Let them study you. Let them try to decode your silence. Let them exhaust themselves searching for a pattern that exists only in your will. In a world obsessed with talking, action is rare and terrifying. We live in an age where everyone announces their next step, new plans, goals, habits, transformations. and upgrades. They talk about what they'll do before doing it, mistaking attention for progress. But here's the truth. The more you talk, the more predictable you become. The more predictable, the easier to stop. But a man who acts in silence, builds without boasting, plans without promising, becomes unstoppable. By the time the world reacts, it's too late. The Stoics didn't care for words. They didn't post daily affirmations or flaunt their virtues. They lived quietly, resolutely, with discipline. They knew silent action is the clearest expression of self-respect. Epictetus said it best. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. Let others explain. Let them sell dreams. Let them chase applause for ideas of success while you pursue success itself. I knew a woman named Samira, brilliant and determined, but so quiet she was nearly invisible. While others bragged about new projects, future promotions, or side hustles, Samira just worked. At first, no one noticed her. They thought she was timid, passive, forgettable, until her name came up as the one who built a system saving millions. Suddenly, every eye turned to her. But by then, she'd already moved on, promoted, reassigned, elevated beyond anyone's expectations. They were too busy talking to see her coming. That's the power of silent action. It shifts power unexpectedly, delivers results without explanation, and leaves opponents stunned. Not because they didn't see you coming, but because they underestimated you until it was too late. To cultivate this strength, close the door, work hard, let your efforts echo in silence. Don't warn anyone. Don't predict your greatness. Don't overpromise. Just vanish into action and emerge with results. When you act without warning, you don't just dodge resistance, you spark fear. Not fear of what you say you'll do, but of what you might do next. That silence, that tension, that mystery becomes stronger than any words you could speak. In a world chasing likes, applause, and social approval, most people bend themselves, tweak their words, shrink their truth just to be liked. They smile when they don't want to, nod when they disagree, dim their reality to avoid conflict. That's why someone who doesn't do this, who walks their own path, becomes a threat, not because they're cruel or combative, but because their authenticity challenges others. When you stop trying to fit in, you don't just free yourself, you unsettle others. Not by attacking them, but by reflecting what they've long abandoned the courage to be themselves. I knew a man named Jace. Not loud or abrasive, but he had a way of making others uneasy without trying. He spoke clearly, never softening his voice to please. He ignored trends, wore what he wanted, said what he thought. When others gossiped, he stayed silent, not out of fear, but principle. Some avoided him, calling him harsh or arrogant, but deep down, they felt pressure not from him, but from their own inability to match his authenticity. He was simply himself, unapologetic and steady, more revolutionary than any rebellion. That's the paradox of truth. It doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it stands calmly, forcing others to face their own masks. The Stoics believed in living true to your nature, not the world's expectations or the crowd's mood, but to virtue, integrity, and consistency, especially when it makes you stand out. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't waste time debating what a good man should be. Be one. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to match the room's energy. You don't even need to be understood. Just be real. In a world built on performance, authenticity is terrifying. To become that force, stop apologizing for who you are. Stop dulling yourself to be palatable. Stop hiding your sharpness, your pace, your clarity just to make others comfortable. Say less, but mean more. Say no when it's no. Walk away when it's over. Never apologize for the standards you hold, as long as you hold them for yourself first. When you become your unyielding self, unshaken by attention or performance, you walk with a quiet weight. That weight makes the insecure adjust their masks before you even glance their way. You don't need to shout, threaten, or beg for respect. Yet they hesitate. They doubt. They fear what you might do because you give them nothing to read, only to feel. You don't fight enemies. You become someone who unsettles them just by existing. No noisy. No drama. Just the quiet strength of self-mastery. The most formidable man isn't the loudest, but the one who doesn't need to speak. So don't shout. Don't explain. Don't rush for attention. Let your silence speak. Let your boundaries resonate. Let your quiet wound them in ways they never expected. And when they finally see who you are, you're already gone calm, focused, untouchable. If these words stir something deep within you, if you feel the shift to become that silent force, leave a comment. I'm done explaining. I act and commit, not because anyone demands it, but because you're tired of ordinary. Welcome to the world of quiet strength.